Can everyone see my screen? Thanks. Everyone can see the presentation? Nods. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining today for this Access Info session. We're really excited for this summer in Houston, which will be our third pilot year of the program and the last year of this program being a pilot before it moves into a more permanent aspect of the JCC Maccabi experience. So I appreciate you all joining for this conversation. For those who have participated previously, some of this information will be a repeat of what you already know, but we also have some new and exciting initiatives and plans for this year. And for those who are learning about Access for the first time, welcome. Thank you for taking the time. Really appreciative of you being here and excited to have more delegations and more communities participate in Access and bring the values of Access into their communities also as a result of this program. I'm going to go over a lot of information today, but I first want to just give some introductions. For those who don't know me, my name is Sierra Weiss. I'm the Access and Inclusion Specialist for JCC Association. And a big part of my role is overseeing Access, which is such an honor and has been so amazing to see this program continue to grow over the past 2 years and now going into the third year. We also have Liv Mendelson on the call, who is our Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Consultant, as well as Sam Cohen, who could not join us today, but who you all know very well. And then we have not everyone from this list, but I do want to give a shout out to some of the really important people who have been involved in developing Access, from the Continental Access Task Force, Betsy Lynch, who I think saw on the call, Scott Ehrlich, and Todd Rockoff, who have all been incredible partners in developing the idea for Access and helping execute it and review it each year and continue to evolve the program to be the best that it can be. And also, I want to give a lot of thanks already to our JCC Maccabi Access team in Houston, who have already been working really diligently to get this program off the ground and have spent a lot of time with me and internally starting the work for this program. Hillary Most, who's the JC Maccabi Games Director, Lenny Dubin, who's on this call, who's the chair of the Access Games, and Tim Irwin, who is one of the JCC staff partners working on Access. So today, I'm just going to go through the agenda for what we will be going over, the general goals of JCC Maccabi Access, just to give an overview, and especially for those of you that this is a new program that you're thinking of participating in. I'm going to give a quick recap of JCC Maccabi Access pilot years 1 and 2, talk a little bit about the growth and evolution during those first 2 years, and then talk about the plans for pilot year 3 in Houston, what participation looks like, expectations, costs, all of those important details that you'll want to know. And then I'll share a bit about our plans beyond 2024. As I mentioned, this is the last year of our pilot before the program moves into its more permanent status. And then I will open it up for questions. And I'm going to take a page out of the Sam Cohen playbook and ask that you, if you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat or take note of them. And we will have that time for questions at the end. I will cover a lot of information, so I don't want to pause throughout the presentation for questions, but happy to answer any of those as we get to the end of the presentation. Okay, I just see a few people joining in right now, so I'm just going to add them in. Okay, so just to give an overview of the goals for JCC Maccabi Access, as this program has been developed, we wanted to create a quality JCC Maccabi experience for Jewish athletes with intellectual and developmental disabilities through both specialized programs that are specifically for our Access athletes, as well as unified programs that bring the Access athletes together with the general JCC Maccabi athletes. And this was a really important goal recognized by some of our members of the Access Task Force, that JCC Maccabi, as we all know, is such an incredible opportunity for Jewish teens and young adults to engage with their communities, have this really incredible encounter with Jewish peers. And as we all know, this is a Jewish peoplehood experience through the lens of sports. And we realized that there were some members of our community who were not being included intentionally in this program. And so Access was developed, and I have to say we've been really successful in these past 2 years of really creating an incredible program for our athletes in Access that also gives them incredible gateway into the Jewish community and a touch point with their Jewish identity that for many of them they haven't had before. Also important to Access is to develop a program that is replicable and becomes a permanent aspect of the future of JCC Maccabi and JCC programs more broadly, and provide an engagement opportunity that you as JCC community staff can capitalize on and develop ongoing programs for these athletes and their families in local communities. This is a really great way to engage with people in your community who might not already be engaged with your JCC or with your Jewish community, and bring them into those conversations, give them a way to participate, and also think about how the program model can be replicated on a more local level through programming, whether that's sports related or building on friendships that were made at the games between Access athletes and the general Maccabi athletes, and giving opportunities for those relationships and programs to continue to develop beyond just the week-long program during the summer. And it's also a way to identify and cultivate ongoing resources, whether that's time, talent, or funding, to ensure the success of ongoing local programming in your communities. So looking back at pilot year 2 in Fort Lauderdale, we had incredible growth from pilot year 1 to 2. As some of you might recall, in our first pilot year, we had 7 athletes represented in 4 communities. And this summer, we had 21 athletes representing 8 communities through 7 delegations. And we also, based on feedback from the first pilot year, increased the length of the program from 2.5 days to 3.5 days, which, while it is shorter than the broader JCC Maccabi experience, we found after this summer that 3.5 days really feels like the perfect amount of time for our athletes to have a really amazing and intense and overwhelming experience without that pushing their boundaries too far, that they feel like they get so much out of those 3.5 days. And after that, they're ready to go back to their routines and, normal sleeping schedules and all of those things. And this past summer, our sports included football, bowling, swimming, and basketball. And we did a whole very fun water activities day on our final day, rather than a more competitive sports opportunity. And as we went about our review process for the games, I just wanted to highlight a few of the family experiences that we pulled out of the data from our surveys. I'm going to round it up, 92% of families felt that the program was a good value for its cost, with the majority of families paying $1,500 or less to participate in the experience. And that includes flights and all of that, which I'll get into more details of the cost later in the presentation. 100% of participants felt it was a meaningful experience for their athlete and the family to meet other Jewish families that had kids with disabilities in the family. And 100% were likely to recommend participating in JCC Maccabi Access to others. So this for us was really meaningful to get this sort of feedback, and I hope that this will be helpful for you as you go about recruiting in your communities, that there has been a really positive response to this experience. And I'm not going to read through all of these quotes, but I did want to include in here because I will send it out after this call, the presentation, to include some quotes and photos of some of the families and their experiences. As you're going about recruitment, I highly recommend pulling from these 2 slides, quotes and photos that you can use in your marketing. The experiences that our athletes had are so amazing, and for them, so many of the families experience barriers for their kids participating in programming, and especially within the Jewish community. So having this program that not only provides access to a really incredible Jewish experience, but also a sports program where their kids are really push to try new things, to develop new skills, to find out new loves of sports and other activities that they want to bring back to their day-to-day at home has been so valuable for all of the athletes and their families. So this summer's program is going to look very similar in its model to last year. It's going to be a 3.5-day program running parallel to the 2024 JCC Maccabi games in Houston. So I know this is the first summer that we're going to have games in 2 locations. Access is only going to be in Houston, still being a pilot. That felt like the appropriate scale for us this year. And our goal is to have more than 10 JCC delegations participating in a range of about 20 to 30 athletes, depending on capacity and interest. And we will again be doing an intensive post-games access task force evaluation of the program, see how the changes and things that we've learned from pilot years 1 and 2 and bringing them into pilot year 3, what continues to work, what changes work, what things still need to be adjusted as we're looking beyond this summer. And then our goal, and we've already had a commitment from Tucson to host the Access program in 2025. We're going to be spending a lot more time thinking about the longevity of this program and how it continues to be sustained and be a part of the JCC Maccabi experience in future years. And I also wanted to share, again, this is a draft, but a rough sense of what the program looks like. A lot of families, from our experience, one of the first questions they ask if they're in the recruitment process is, what's the program going to look like? What can I expect? And while we try not to fully solidify all of the programming until we know who our athletes are, because a really important part of the Access experience is tailoring the program to the needs and the skills of our athletes who are involved in the program. We also know that, especially for this population, knowing what you're signing up for, knowing what the schedule is going to look like is really important. So I wanted to share this draft program overview as well. Will be a more detailed program schedule draft in the Dropbox for all of you to look at. But this is a good snapshot to share with families. Each day will look roughly the same, with 2 sports activities on the 2 full days of the program, with the rest time and intentional programming in between, like hang time or JCC cares, followed in the evening by a dinner and an evening program. And these will look a little different day to day, but this is kind of like the rough model that we found to be really effective for our athletes, also incorporating in plenty of rest time and time to recuperate and get ready for the next activity. And as I mentioned, the program, and we're really putting even more effort this year into this, of making sure that we have really intentional and amazing unified programs where the Access athletes and the general athletes get to be together, make friendships, get to know one another. And then there's also specialized activities that are really just for our Access athletes so that they can be in a comfortable and supportive place as they're going about their sports skills development. And we haven't yet solidified all of the sports for this year, but some examples of the activities that we might be doing are listed here. So moving on into the criteria for participation and those expectations, we ask that any JCC participating in Access designate an Access coordinator. This can look a little different depending on the community and the size of your Access delegation. The expectation for this coordinator is for them to serve as the liaison between the local delegation and the continental organizers. It just helps us streamline that process if I can share information with one person who then spreads it to their community members participating, rather than me having to go to each family individually. And if a delegation has 3 or more athletes in it, then we also expect that coordinator travel to the games with the delegation. A big piece of the Access experience is having one-to-one support. So we have a requirement that each athlete participating in Access have a one-to-one support person with them at all times. And this we leave up to the family to decide who that person is. It can be a family member. It can be someone who's a support person in their day-to-day life back at home. It could be a JCC staff person if they have a relationship with someone who feels comfortable being in that role. We don't want to be very prescriptive with this role, other than there needs to be a support person. And as long as they're over 21 and feel comfortable with the responsibilities of that role, that family can choose whoever they want for that aspect. And this is also, I think, a question has come up often of, saying the criteria for participating in access is intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's a very broad spectrum of experiences and needs and accommodation requirements. This one-to-one support is a pretty key element of a distinction between someone who might have a diagnosis that would require that additional support versus maybe someone who has a diagnosis but might still be comfortable participating in the games more broadly with just some additional support coming from coaches or other members. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. We also, if you're going to participate in the games, you need to have the capacity to recruit athletes to be in access. And if you have opportunities for fundraising or subsidies to cover participant costs in your community, that's also an excellent bonus. So just digging a little deeper into the role of the access coordinator, just so as you're thinking of your community and your participation, who that might be. Someone who's going to be expected to oversee participant intake process to support with that process, to go through RegPack and CampDoc. Eli, of course, is always available to support there as well, but being really that person who's going to follow up with families, make sure that they're going through that process and getting all the necessary information in is really important. They're also responsible for overseeing their access participants and the one-to-one. So making sure that everyone has a one-to-one, that's all lined up, and that communication is clear between the families and those people, that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities. We do ask, and we know that this is not always possible, but as much as possible, especially if the coordinator is going to be traveling to the games with the access athletes, that they not have any other additional responsibilities at the game, so they can really focus their attention with access. And then the coordinator will also have to work very closely with all of you as DHs, and I'll go into a little bit more of your expectations as well, but to have a really communicative and good relationship with the delegation heads so that they have all the information. We, from the Continental perspective, share all the information that the delegation coordinators need to know about access, but there's also a lot of other things involved in the games, like what time your delegation photo is when you arrive in Houston, or if they have to bring something to donate as part of JCC Cares. All that information should still be streamlined through the delegation head. Like I mentioned before, they're expected to travel with the participants to the games if they have a delegation of 3 or more, and then assist with communication, both between the delegation head and the team, as well as with the Continental team as well, to just make sure that they are really a strong communicator between all the various stakeholders in this program. And then the role of the DH in all of this is to, again, coordinate and communicate with the access coordinator and directly with the access families where needed. We're really encouraging this year a new initiative to create a buddy system for access athletes, that once you have athletes signed up for access, we encourage you to pair them with an athlete in your delegation so that and encourage them to do things together prior to the games. And it's not a huge lift. We're not asking you to 3 months in advance plan for them to be hanging out every single week, but encourage at least 1 or 2 opportunities for them to shoot hoops or go get ice cream or do something together with other members of your delegation, so that when they're arriving at the games, they already have some familiar faces in what can be a really overwhelming experience. We also ask that you include access athletes in any pre-games programming. and try to, and we'll share materials and resources for this, but educate and think of ways that you can incorporate education about what the Access program is and values of inclusion into any communications and opportunities you have with your delegation as a whole, to make sure that they're aware that there are Access athletes participating and what those expectations are of your athletes to be welcoming and friendly to our Access athletes. So for participant criteria, the age range for Access is 12 to 22 years old. Like the games, they have to be Jewish. And again, intellectual and cognitive disabilities is the category of disability that we are bringing into this program. The requirement for one-to-one caregiver support. And then they'll need to complete a intake form, which I'll go into more detail on that with the support of the Access coordinator, and they'll need to receive approval to attend. So we add this extra step just to make sure that when athletes are signing up for the Access experience, that it actually is an appropriate fit for them. And we just do want to be mindful of any behaviors that might make it an unsafe environment. It's yet to come up, but we do just want to make sure that we understand the needs of the athletes who want to participate in Access, so that we can be sure that we are going to be able to provide a safe and accessible experience for them. And then again, they will, like all athletes, have to complete delegation registration and pay the local JCC and the national registration. So something new and very exciting for this year, born out of having 2 locations for the games and also increased interest in the program, is we're opening up. It used to be a requirement that in order to participate in Access, athletes had to be part of an existing delegation that was coming to the games. This year, we know that there are some delegations that will be going to Detroit, but have Access athletes who will have to be in Houston. So we are opening up the program to any athletes who want to participate. And it doesn't matter whether or not your delegation is actually going to Houston. And so what we asked, and I'll go through this process, but in your interest form, which delegations have to submit, there's a space to just indicate that your athletes will need to be part of a continental team. And because this is a new initiative, it's going to be one that's evolving as we're going through the registration process. Depending on the number of athletes, if it's just a few who fall into this category, we're just going to pair those athletes with the closest nearby delegation, so that they still get to be a part of a bigger delegation, maybe get to participate in some pre-games programming. And if we have a larger number who fit into this category, we're going to likely do a J-team style delegation. So this is exciting and really opens up the program to more Access participation. But also, this is going to be an evolving process as we go through the intake over the next few months. So the participant intake form, we've made a slight adjustment to this process after last year and some feedback from families. We are going to be using CampDoc as our intake process. So we have all the information that we need to gather from athletes, thanks to Eli's help and my many, many questions to him about this, to make our CampDoc process get all the questions we need to know about our athletes. We ask about their specific needs, communication, all the various aspects of who the athlete is and what sorts of accommodations we can provide for them will all be in the reg pack. And then once they're accepted into the program, that's when they'll go and fill out their information in CampDoc as well. And just to spend some time breaking down the cost, there are really 4 partners investing in this program to bring Access to life, and that's JCC Association, host communities, visiting JCCs, and the participant families themselves. So JCC Association and the host community, we invest in creating equalized grounds costs for our participants. So even though our athletes have one-to-one support people with them and stay in a hotel rather than within the community, we subsidize the hotel accommodations for participants. So it's one hotel room per athlete is covered. So for example, if a non-family member is serving as the one-to-one and the family is still traveling with the athlete, that athlete might require 2 rooms, one for them and their family and one for the one-to-one. If that is the case, one room is covered for them, and the additional room, it is up to the JCC and the family to decide if the JCC might be willing to cover that additional cost, or if the family will have to incur that cost. And we've worked it out, thanks to the team in Houston, with the hotel that we'll be staying at, that the block rate that we've secured for the hotel will apply to any additional rooms that need to be booked, as well as if families want to extend their stay in either direction, either before the games or after, that block rate will be applied to that entire stay. And we also subsidize registration costs. We waive registration for one-to-ones. They still do have to register through Camp Talk and RegPack because we still need all that relevant information about them, but they do not have to pay a registration fee. And then the participant and JCC delegation costs is $750 for registration as the base, like everyone else. Travel to and from Houston, and then a JCC might also incur additional costs depending on their system with their delegation access coordinator for their time, their travel, if there's 3 or more athletes, and their hotel stay if they are, again, traveling with their delegation. And then for all of your delegations, whatever you charge your general athletes to cover pre and post programming and uniform and additional Maccabi swag, that's up to you how you decide the cost of participating in access. But our expectation is that the cost of an access athlete participating should be no more than any other participant in your delegation. So if your delegation cost ends up being, $12.50, which includes swag and other programming, that can be the same cost. It can be less, like if you want to subsidize or have a donor who wants to help subsidize the cost of registration for access athletes, that's awesome. It'd be great if the cost is less, but it cannot be more. And just this reiterates it, our goal is for equalized participation costs. We want to level the playing field so that access athletes participating, although there's a lot more costs associated with their participation, we want to make sure that they are paying no more than any other athlete participating. And this really is an investment on our part from JCC Association, on the host community, and also an investment for you all, for your local JCC, to make sure that this equalized cost is the standard. So just to walk through the steps to participate, just to get it all onto one page after I've spent some time walking through the process in a lot more detail. The first step is for you as the DH or the delegation coordinator to submit a form expressing your intent to participate. And this will include how many athletes you anticipate would be interested from your community, what your current inclusion programming looks like, who that delegation coordinator might be, whether your delegation is planning to be in Houston or if the athletes would be a part of the continental delegation. All of that goes into step 1, this intention, this intake process. And then you'll have time for recruitment where there will be an expectation for you to recruit whatever number of athletes we allot. And so I skipped a step between 1 and 2, which is for us. Once I get all of those forms that express interest, we will do an allotment process and then let you know how many spots we've allotted your delegation to recruit for. And then you'll go ahead and recruit for those spots and have those athletes go through the application process. And then once they submit their applications, we'll respond on a rolling basis. Again, the answer is almost always going to be yes. There might be some follow-up questions if there's any concerning behaviors or certain things we just need to clarify to understand if this really is an appropriate fit. And then once those athletes are approved, they'll be able to then go through the rest of the registration process, and then they get to attend the games. And just to give some ideas for delegation building, we know that every JCC community has a different makeup to their inclusion programs or their community. This is a really great opportunity to talk to families in your current programs, but also to connect with local organizations that support young adults with disabilities in your community. This is a really great opportunity for partnership and networking and thinking of ways that you can work together with other organizations in the community. And also it's a great way to bring in new families who maybe are not so inclined to participate in a Jewish community center, but this might be a really excellent opportunity for their family to really get their foot in the door to be more involved in the Jewish community. And to give a timeline for our expectations for these next steps, in the follow-up call, and I believe you already have it, but we'll share the interest form, and we ask that you return those interest forms to me by January 12th, so we know about how many athletes are interested from the various delegations who want to participate. And then we will notify you by the end of the month with our allotments. So how many athletes from your delegation we're giving space for in the program. And at that same time, we will open up the application process. RegPack will be ready by, Camp Doc will be open by then for people to start going through that process. And we ask that applications be in for Access Athletes by April 1st to give us about a month of space between receiving applications and then being able to approve and push through the rest of registration. We are going to be this year having a late fee for Access Athlete registration. We've had some challenges in previous years of really having to chase families down to the last minute to get all this really important information in. And in some ways for Access more than the general program, we really need to know a lot of the details about our athletes, not just to ensure their safety, but to make sure that we are going to be able to create a program that is accessible to them, accommodates their needs, and that we have the time to really prepare appropriately. So we are going to have a late fee this year if people are not registered by May 1st. This question already came up with a different conversation I had, but this will, of course, there will be exceptions if someone is not recruited until later. And the reason that they are applying and registering late is because we did not get to them in time. We will, of course, on a case-by-case basis, make exceptions to those late fees, but our goal really is to have everyone registered by May 1st. So we have an appropriate amount of time to get all the details of the programs ready and with our athletes in mind and their specific needs. And then just to give you all a snapshot beyond this pilot year before I open it up to questions. As I mentioned, this has been a 3-year pilot program and we are going into our 3rd and final year of the pilot. And we're very, very excited that we already have the commitment from Tucson in 2025 to host Access. And we are looking forward to Access being a more permanent part of the program moving forward and figuring out what exactly that looks like. Our goal is for every games to include an Access component to them, and really to put more focus as we move beyond our pilot program to use Access as a way to stimulate local participation and integration, that participating communities will come to the games and hopefully will return from the experience with new ideas and ways of integrating families and athletes and people with disabilities in their community in new and innovative ways, and using Access as a model for what that might look like. We're also going to be working this year to provide webinars and resources and materials for all of you as you're planning your recruitment process and also participation in Access, both for the Access families, giving you ideas of programs and different things you can do in your communities leading up to the games, and also resources for you to help educate your delegation as a whole and participating athletes and families. And what does Access mean? How do we embody the values of inclusion beyond just through including Access in our program, but also in every aspect of the JCC Maccabi experience? So that's something for you to also look out to. And even if you're unable in the end to participate in Access this year as a community, there's still ways to engage. And as always, we'll have some resources in the Dropbox. We're working right now on updating those marketing materials and applications and all those different forms in there to this year's materials, but those will be coming soon. And we'll send an email with all those attachments and the links as soon as that's ready to go. So I know I just did a whole lot of talking. I'm sure there are questions, but I really want to thank you all for taking this first step to participate in Access. We really are excited to continue growing the program, and that's thanks to the Houston team for hosting this year, and also to all of you for your interest in participating and bringing athletes. So thanks to all of you, and I will stop sharing my screen now so I can see all of you, and happy to take any questions you might have.
Sierra, I just have a comment.
Yes.
This is Lenny. I'm from Houston. We are a 5-time host. We haven't hosted since 2012, so we're very excited about having the JCC Maccabi games back in Houston. And we're very honored and thrilled to be able to host the Access program as well. We're looking forward to following in San Diego and Fort Lauderdale's footsteps and their best practices, and at the same time infusing our Southern hospitality and the things that Houston's known for. So we're very, very excited. When I was in Fort Lauderdale last summer, and I went to actually several Access events, and after closing ceremony and after Debbie and I received the torch for hosting for this year, several of the Access participants came up and said, "We want to come to Texas. We've never been to Texas." So I'm hoping that excitement continues with the participants from last year. And this is something that now that the age range has actually been extended a bit more, but it's all new to us as well as for many of you. And so for the next few months, what we're going to be doing is getting the word out locally. You can ask me anything you want about Maccabi, and I can probably tell you. But as most of you, Access is new for me and our Houston community. So we're mobilizing people in the schools and organizations and organizations that are involved in the Access community. And we're hoping to, right now we don't have anybody on board, but we're hoping to mobilize and get the word out in the next couple of months and have a nice representation for the Houston community as part of the program. So I welcome all of you. And as we go through this process, obviously, Sierra will be your first main contact. But if there's any questions, Sierra can give you my contact information. If there's anything you need to know about Houston, we already have a very, very an all-star team of lay leaders that have stepped up to the plate and are joining me in this. So we're very excited. And that will only, as word gets out, people will come and say, "I want to be involved." So you can never have enough volunteers, but right now we're in very good shape and we're very excited. And you're all welcome to come to Houston.
Thank you, Lenny. We're all very excited to be in Houston this summer. Does anyone have any questions about Access that I did not go over in the presentation? Happy to answer anything. If there are no questions, that might mean that I finally nailed the presentation after on the third day.
I wanted to make one extra comment. We met with the Embassy Suites, which is in the Galleria area. It's about 10 or 15 minutes from our JCC, and it's only a few minutes away from the host hotel, the Hilton Post Oak, where the games will be. All the coaches and delegations will be staying. It's only a few minutes from there. So it's great for these Access participants and their families. I guess that some of them may want to come in a few days before, depending, I've already discussed with Sierra, depending on how many, as we go through this process, if there are enough that people come in early, we're even entertaining doing something on Shabbat. Obviously getting them things to do in Houston. And by the same token, they may want to stay after the games for a few days, since the families are making the trips, to make a little vacation out of it. Embassy Suites has been phenomenal. There are a lot of rooms for, accessible for people with disabilities. There are adjoining rooms for families and things like this. They're locking in the rate, I believe. We'll get back in touch with you, but it's about $149. But that comes with the Embassy Suites full package of, free breakfast and snacks and things like that. So it's a great location. And they're also guaranteeing that rate if families want to come in for a few days before or stay a few days afterwards. So we have a lot of options there as we walk through this together for hotel accommodations.
Thank you. And thank you to the Houston team and Lenny for making sure that we have those needs met in our hotel, and a team there that's really supporting us and will be working closely with us and the families to handle any needs or requests that come through. So I'm going to give a final call for questions, but if no one has any questions, I guess we can end a little bit early, and then I'll make sure to get out all of this information to all of you so you can start submitting your interest forms and recruiting in your communities. Again, any questions before we call it today? Okay, well, I will put my email in the chat, and I know that I'll send an email as well so everyone can reach me. But if anyone has any questions or anything specific to their community, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to get on a call with you or answer any questions that you have. And really looking forward to seeing all of you in Houston and hopefully having your communities participate in this program. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.